The rain that night wasn't just cold, it soaked through clothes, through skin, all the way to the bone. Ryan Mitchell's pickup truck struggled through the storm, wipers fighting a losing battle, when he saw her. A girl in a thin jacket, 18 maybe, shaking under a broken streetlight. He pulled over without thinking, offered her a ride in his beat-up truck that smelled like motor oil and old coffee. During that 20-minute drive, neither of them knew that a simple act of kindness would change everything. Because the next morning, when 3 men in black suits knocked on his door, Ryan realized that some people you help aren't just strangers. They're doorways to a life you never imagined. Ryan Mitchell woke to the sound of his daughter's breathing. Emma slept in the twin bed across from his, her small chest rising and falling beneath a quilt that had seen better years. The apartment was quiet except for the drip of the kitchen faucet he kept meaning to fix. Dawn light filtered through thin curtains, casting shadows across walls that needed paint. He'd get to it, eventually. When there was money, when there was time, he rose carefully, feet finding the cold floor, and made his way to the kitchen. The routine was muscle memory now. Coffee, then Emma's breakfast. The pancake batter mixed thin because he'd watered down the milk to make it last another week. Emma wouldn't notice. 6-year-olds rarely did. She'd eat them with the maple syrup he'd saved from a diner months ago, little packets tucked into his pocket when the waitress wasn't looking. The coffee maker sputtered to life as Emma padded into the kitchen, her hair a nest of tangles. She wore pajamas with cartoon bears that were too small now, the cuffs riding up her ankles. Ryan made a mental note. New pajamas. Add it to the list with the faucet and the paint and the 100 other things that required money he didn't have. "Morning, baby," he said, cracking eggs into the pan. 2 eggs. One for her, one for him. Tomorrow he'd skip his and say he wasn't hungry. "Morning, Daddy." Emma climbed onto the chair, her feet swinging above the floor. On the table sat her latest drawing. Stick figures holding hands. 3 of them. Ryan didn't ask about the 3rd figure. He already knew. Every child drew their missing parent eventually. Emma just drew hers with a question mark for a face. "School today," Ryan said, flipping the pancakes. They were thin, almost translucent, but they'd do. "Mrs. Miller will pick you up after. I've got the late shift." Emma nodded, used to the routine. Used to Mrs. Miller, the neighbor who watched her for $20 a week. Used to her father's tired eyes and the way he moved through their small apartment like a man carrying invisible weight. She was used to all of it, and Ryan hated that. 6 years old and already learning that life meant making do. He served breakfast and watched Emma eat. She took small bites, savoring each one, and something in Ryan's chest tightened. His daughter shouldn't have to savor cheap pancakes. She should be drowning in syrup, laughing, complaining about too much food. But here they were, and this was what he could give her. For now. After breakfast, Ryan braided Emma's hair. His fingers fumbled with the strands, never quite getting it right, but he tried. Every morning, he tried. Sarah would have known how. Sarah would have made it look effortless. But Sarah had been gone for 3 years now, and Ryan had learned to braid hair from YouTube videos watched at 2 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. "You're getting better at this," Emma said, her voice soft. "Yeah?" Ryan tied off the braid with a rubber band. "Doesn't look too crooked?" "Only a little." She turned and smiled at him, gap-toothed and beautiful, and Ryan felt the familiar ache of love and inadequacy twist together in his gut. He drove Emma to school in the pickup truck. The engine coughed twice before turning over, and the dashboard light for the check engine flickered on and off like a warning he couldn't afford to heed. The truck would last another few months. It had to. After dropping Emma off, watching her small form disappear into the school building, Ryan headed to work. The maintenance job at the office building paid minimum wage and required him to be invisible. He cleaned toilets, emptied trash, fixed broken locks and leaking pipes. The building was 15 stories of glass and steel, filled with people in expensive suits who never looked at him twice. Ryan preferred it that way. Invisibility had its advantages. No one asked questions. No one expected explanations. But late that afternoon, As Ryan was repairing a jammed door on the third floor, he overheard two men talking in the hallway. Their voices carried, sharp with frustration. The HVAC system is shot. Third time this month. Facilities director says it'll take 2 weeks to get someone out here. Ryan listened, his hands still on the door mechanism. HVAC. He knew those systems. Had designed them, actually, back when he'd been someone else. Back when he'd been Ryan Mitchell, mechanical engineer, specialist in commercial building systems. Before the hospital bills, before Sarah, before he'd lost everything and rebuilt himself into this smaller, quieter version. He said nothing, fixed the door, moved on. That evening, the storm rolled in. Ryan finished his shift and headed to the parking garage, the sky already dark and swollen with rain. By the time he reached the truck, water was coming down in sheets. He turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then caught. The wipers barely worked, smearing the rain across the windshield in uneven arcs. Ryan drove carefully, hands tight on the wheel. The streets were nearly empty, most people smart enough to stay inside. He was thinking about Emma, about whether Mrs. Miller had given her dinner, when he saw the figure on the sidewalk. A girl, young, maybe 18. She stood under a streetlight that flickered and died as he passed, her thin jacket plastered to her frame. No umbrella, no phone visible, just standing there, soaked and shaking. Ryan slowed the truck. Every instinct told him to keep driving. You didn't stop for strangers in this city. You didn't get involved. But the girl looked so lost, so utterly abandoned, that his foot found the brake before his mind caught up. He rolled down the window. Rain immediately sprayed into the truck's cab. "You okay?" The girl turned. Her face was pale, eyes wide with something beyond cold. Fear, maybe. Or shock. I don't know where I am. You got a phone?" "Dead." Her voice trembled. "I had a fight with my mom. I just started walking. And then, the rain." She looked around as if seeing the street for the first time. "I don't even know what neighborhood this is." Ryan sat there, engine idling, water pouring down. He should drive away. Should leave this girl to figure out her own problems. But then she wrapped her arms around herself, and he thought of Emma. Thought of his daughter lost and scared and alone in a storm. "Get in," he said. The girl hesitated, then opened the passenger door and climbed inside. She smelled like rain and something floral, expensive perfume now diluted by water. Up close, Ryan could see she was definitely young, barely out of high school. Her clothes, despite being soaked, looked expensive. Designer labels. This wasn't a girl used to being lost. "Thank you," she said, teeth chattering. "I'm Lily. Ryan." He put the truck in gear. "Where do you live?" She gave him an address in one of the nicer neighborhoods, the kind with gates and security cameras and houses that Ryan couldn't afford to look at. It was a 20-minute drive in good weather. In this storm, it'd take longer. They drove in silence for a while. The truck's heater barely worked, pushing out lukewarm air that did little against the cold. Lily shivered in her seat, and Ryan reached behind to grab his work jacket. It was stained and smelled like cleaning supplies, but it was dry. "Here," he said, handing it to her. Lily took it, wrapping it around herself. "You're very kind. Just human. Most people would have kept driving." Ryan shrugged. "I've got a daughter. She's 6. If she was ever lost and scared." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Lily looked at him then, really looked, as if seeing him for the first time. "What's her name?" "Emma." "That's pretty." Lily pulled the jacket tighter. "My mom's never around. She's always working, always busy. I can't remember the last time she actually saw me." Ryan heard the hurt beneath the anger. He'd heard it before, in therapy sessions after Sarah died, in his own voice when he'd screamed at a God he didn't believe in. The hurt of being unseen, the rage of being left behind. "People show love differently," he said quietly. "Doesn't always mean they don't care." "She doesn't even know I exist," Lily said. "Not really. I'm just another item on her schedule. Another obligation. Ryan wanted to say something comforting, but the truth was, he didn't know Lily's mother. Didn't know their story. So he just drove, letting the rain fill the silence, and eventually pulled up to the address she'd given. The house was massive. 3 stories, all glass and steel and modern architecture. Security lights illuminated a pristine lawn. This was wealth. Real wealth. The kind Ryan had only seen from a distance. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt, then paused. Thank you, really, for stopping, for listening. Stay dry, Ryan said. And maybe call your mom. Let her know you're okay. Lily nodded, though her expression said she wouldn't. She opened the door, started to leave, then turned back. What you said earlier, about your daughter. You love her a lot, don't you? More than anything. She's lucky. Lily handed him back his jacket and stepped into the rain. Ryan watched her run to the front door, which opened before she reached it. A woman in a dark suit stood silhouetted in the light, and even from the truck, Ryan could see the relief in her posture. He put the truck in gear and drove away, leaving the wealth and the warmth behind. The next morning started like every other. Coffee, pancakes, Emma's tangled hair. But when the knock came at 7:15, sharp and insistent, Ryan knew immediately that something was different. He opened the door to find 3 men in black suits standing in the hallway. They looked like federal agents or bodyguards or lawyers, the kind of men who existed in a world Ryan no longer belonged to. Emma peered out from behind him, her small hand gripping his shirt. Ryan Mitchell? The lead man asked. Yeah? Someone would like to speak with you. If you'll come with us. Ryan's mind raced. Had he done something wrong? Was this about Lily? Who wants to see me? She'll explain everything. Please, Mr. Mitchell. It's important. The pronoun registered. She. Ryan looked down at Emma, who stared up at him with wide eyes. Let me call Mrs. Miller. My daughter. We'll wait. 10 minutes later, Emma was safely with Mrs. Miller, and Ryan was sitting in the back of a black sedan that smelled like leather and money. The men didn't talk, didn't explain, just drove through the city until they reached a building Ryan recognized from the skyline. Reynolds Tech, one of the largest tech companies in the country. They took him up a private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened onto an office that could have held Ryan's entire apartment 3 times over. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern art hung on walls, and behind a massive desk sat a woman. She was 38, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too much. She wore a suit that probably cost more than Ryan made in 6 months, but when she stood and crossed the room, he saw something in her expression that looked almost human, almost vulnerable. Mr. Mitchell, she said, extending her hand. I'm Sarah Reynolds, Lily's mother. Ryan shook her hand, his calluses rough against her smooth palm. Is she okay? She's fine. Thanks to you. Sarah gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Ryan sat. The chair was more comfortable than his own bed. Sarah moved to the window, her back to him. Lily told me what you did last night, how you stopped, how you listened. Most people. She paused, and Ryan saw her shoulders tense. Most people see my daughter and see an opportunity, a connection, money. You just saw a scared kid. She was, Ryan said simply. Sarah turned to face him. I want to thank you properly, and I'd like to offer you a position, facility manager here at Reynolds Tech. The pay is competitive. Health insurance, benefits. Ryan sat very still. I'm a janitor. You're a mechanical engineer. Sarah opened a folder on her desk. Ryan Mitchell, graduated MIT, specialized in commercial HVAC and building systems, worked for Morrison Engineering until 3 years ago. She looked up. I do my research, Mr. Mitchell. That was a different life. Why did you leave? The question was direct, and Ryan appreciated that. No dancing around. My wife got sick, cancer, the treatments. We had insurance, but it wasn't enough. I sold everything. Worked 2 jobs. It didn't matter. She died anyway. Left me with a daughter and debt I'm still paying off. Sarah's expression softened. Something in her eyes recognized his pain. I lost my husband 5 years ago. Heart attack. He was here one day and gone the next. Lily was 13. I threw myself into work because I didn't know what else to do. And now, she looked away. Now my daughter thinks I don't care. That work matters more than she does. Does it? Ryan asked. No. Sarah's voice was firm. But I've forgotten how to show her that. Ryan understood then. This wasn't charity. This was a woman drowning in her own way, reaching for something real, something honest. He'd given her daughter 20 minutes of genuine kindness, and that had mattered more than all her money could buy. Why me? Ryan asked. Because you stopped, Sarah said. Because when my daughter needed help, you didn't see an opportunity. You saw a person. That's rare, and I need someone I can trust. Ryan thought about Emma, about the broken faucet and the thin pancakes and the truck that might not last another month. He thought about pride and charity and the difference between earning something and accepting a handout. Sarah was offering him a bridge back to the life he'd lost, but at what cost? I'll take the job, he said, but I earn my keep. No special treatment, no favors because I gave your daughter a ride. Sarah smiled, and for the first time, Ryan saw past the CEO to the tired mother underneath. I wouldn't expect anything less. Ryan started work at Reynolds Tech 3 days later. The building was the same one where he'd worked as a janitor, but now he had an office. Small, nothing like Sarah's, but with his name on the door. Director of Facilities Management. The irony wasn't lost on him. His job was to oversee building maintenance, manage contractors, and ensure the 15-story headquarters ran smoothly. It was work he knew, work he'd trained for, but years of pushing a mop had left him rusty. He spent the first week relearning systems, reviewing blueprints, coordinating with department heads. Sarah checked in regularly. She'd stop by his office under the pretense of discussing building issues, but Ryan noticed she lingered, asked questions. Not about work, but about Emma. About his life. She seemed genuinely curious about how someone functioned outside the bubble of wealth and power. One morning, 2 weeks into the job, Sarah brought coffee. Real coffee, not the break room sludge. She set a cup on Ryan's desk and sat in the chair across from him. How's Emma? She asked. Good. Excited about school. Her teacher says she's talented at art. Lily used to love art, Sarah said, before she decided I was the enemy. Teenagers, Ryan offered. It's more than that. I missed too much. Soccer games, school plays, birthdays. I was always working, always building this. She gestured vaguely at the office around them. I told myself it was for her, that I was securing her future. But all I did was secure my own loneliness. Ryan sipped his coffee. You're here now. Am I? Sarah looked at him. Or am I just doing what I always do? Delegating. Hiring someone to fix a problem I should fix myself. You hired me to manage facilities, not relationships. Didn't I? The question hung in the air between them. Sarah stood, smoothing her skirt. I have a board meeting. But Ryan, would you consider bringing Emma by sometime? I think Lily might like to meet her. And I... She paused. I'd like to meet her too. After Sarah left, Ryan sat alone in his office. The coffee had gone cold. Outside his window, the city sprawled in all directions, millions of lives intersecting in ways they'd never understand. He thought about bridges, about the distance between people, about whether some gaps were too wide to cross. That Saturday, Ryan brought Emma to Sarah's house. He'd wrestled with the decision all week, but Emma had drawn another picture. This time, of her, Ryan, and Miss Sarah from Daddy's work. The empty space in her family portrait was filling in, and Ryan didn't have the heart to erase it. Sarah answered the door in jeans and a simple shirt. Ryan had never seen her in anything but suits. She looked younger, more human. Come in, she said, smiling at Emma. You must be the famous artist. Emma, usually shy, lit up. Daddy told you? He did. Would you like to see my art supplies? I have more paint than I know what to do with. They spent the afternoon in Sarah's home studio, a room filled with canvases and paints and brushes of every size. Lily joined them after an hour, sullen at first, but Emma's enthusiasm was infectious. Soon the two were painting together, Lily showing Emma techniques while Sarah and Ryan watched from the doorway. She's good with kids, Ryan said quietly. She raised herself. Sarah replied. Had to learn to be the adult when I couldn't. You're being hard on yourself. Am I? Sarah turned to look at him. Lily was right. I chose work over her, every time. I thought I was being strong, independent, showing her women could have it all. But you can't have it all. Not really. Something always breaks. Ryan watched Emma laugh at something, Lily said, her small hands covered in paint. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough? I don't know, Ryan admitted. But it's more than nothing. Over the following weeks, the four of them fell into a rhythm. Saturday afternoons at Sarah's house became routine. Emma and Lily painting while Ryan and Sarah talked, sometimes about work, sometimes about loss and loneliness and the ways people survived grief. Sarah was easy to talk to once the CEO mask came off, and Ryan found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone since Sarah died. His wife. Not Sarah Reynolds, but his Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. They'd met in college. She'd been an English major who loved poetry and hated math. Opposites in every way, but she'd made him laugh, made him feel like life was more than equations and systems. When she got sick, Ryan had watched the light go out of her slowly, one treatment at a time, until nothing remained but pain and memory. I couldn't save her, Ryan said one afternoon. They were alone in Sarah's kitchen while the girls painted upstairs. I had all this education, all this knowledge about how things work, but I couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. Her grip was warm. Some things can't be fixed, only endured. You sound like you know. I do. When James died, I tried to work through it. Tried to build something so big that grief couldn't touch me. But grief doesn't care how successful you are. It finds you anyway. Ryan squeezed her hand. The touch lingered longer than it should have. When Sarah finally pulled away, something had shifted between them. Something neither of them named, but both recognized. Lily noticed it too. She cornered Ryan one Saturday while Sarah was showing Emma how to mix colors. You like my mom, Lily said. It wasn't a question. She's a good person. That's not what I asked. Lily studied him with eyes too old for 18. She's different when you're around. Lighter. Like she remembers how to be human. Lily. I'm not angry. I thought I would be. I was so mad at her for so long. But watching you two. Lily looked toward the studio where Emma's laughter echoed. I see it now. The difference between being present and just existing in the same space. You're present. She's learning that from you. Ryan didn't know what to say. Lily smiled, sad and knowing. Just don't hurt her. She acts tough, but she's not. Not really. I know. Good. Lily turned to leave, then paused. And Ryan? Thanks for stopping that night. I didn't just need a ride home. I needed to know someone would. The crisis came on a Tuesday morning. Ryan was reviewing maintenance schedules when his phone buzzed with an emergency alert. HVAC system failure. Building-wide. Temperature rising rapidly. He dropped everything and ran to the mechanical room in the basement. By the time he arrived, the facilities director was there with 2 technicians, all 3 staring at the dead system like it was a corpse they didn't know how to bury. What happened? Ryan demanded. Total failure. The entire system's crashed. We've got 200 employees upstairs in 85-degree heat. I've called contractors, but the earliest anyone can get here is Thursday. That's 2 days. I know. Ryan moved to the control panel, his hands already moving through diagnostic sequences. The system was old, installed before the building was renovated, but the architecture was familiar. He'd designed similar systems years ago. His mind shifted into that old space. The engineer he'd been before life had beaten it out of him. There, he said, pointing at a valve. The failsafe stuck. It's keeping coolant from cycling. Can you fix it? Maybe. Give me an hour. The director hesitated. Mr. Mitchell, with all due respect, your facilities management. This requires a certified— I am certified, Ryan interrupted. Or I was. 10 years ago, I specialized in commercial HVAC design. Let me try. News spread fast. By the time Ryan was elbow deep in the mechanical system, a crowd had gathered. Employees seeking relief from the heat, security concerned about liability, and Sarah, standing at the back of the crowd, her expression unreadable. Ryan ignored them all. His focus narrowed to the problem in front of him. A corroded connector and a valve that hadn't moved in years. He worked methodically, using tools that felt like extensions of his hands, following instincts he'd thought were dead. An hour became 90 minutes. The crowd grew. Someone brought water, someone else a fan. Ryan kept working, and then, with a hiss and groan, the system kicked back to life. Cold air began flowing through the vents. The temperature gauge dropped. Overhead, the crowd erupted in applause. Ryan straightened, wiping sweat from his face. His shirt was soaked, his hands were filthy. But the system hummed with renewed life, and for the first time in 3 years, Ryan felt like himself, like the man he'd been before grief had hollowed him out. How did you do that? One of the technicians asked. Experience, Ryan said simply. Sarah pushed through the crowd. Her eyes were bright with something Ryan couldn't name. Pride, maybe, or recognition. Mr. Mitchell, my office. Now. The crowd parted as Sarah turned and walked away. Ryan followed, aware of every eye on him, feeling the weight of attention he'd spent years avoiding. Sarah's office felt different this time, more like a stage than a sanctuary. She closed the door and turned to face him. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That you're brilliant. That you could have fixed systems like that all along. She moved closer. You let people think you were just facilities management, but you're an engineer, a damned good one. I was an engineer. Past tense. No. Sarah's voice was firm. You are an engineer. What you did downstairs, solving a problem in 90 minutes that would have taken others days. That's not past tense. That's who you are. Ryan felt something crack inside him. Some wall he'd built between who he'd been and who he'd become. I lost that when I lost her. When Sarah died, everything else died too. I couldn't be that person anymore. Couldn't carry the weight of competence when I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. You didn't fail, Sarah said. You survived. And so did Emma. That takes a different kind of strength. They stood there, close enough to touch, separated by 3 years of grief and loneliness and fear. Ryan wanted to reach for her, wanted to close the distance, but something held him back. Sir? A knock at the door. Sarah's assistant. The board is waiting. Sarah pulled away, her CEO mask sliding back into place. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. She turned back to Ryan. We'll talk later. But Ryan, thank you for being exactly who you are. After Ryan left, Sarah sat alone in her office. The board meeting could wait. She needed a moment to process what she'd just witnessed. Not the technical skill, though that was impressive, but the way Ryan had moved with such quiet confidence, solving problems without ego or showmanship. The way he'd put his head down and done the work. She thought about James, about how different he'd been. James had loved attention, loved being the smartest person in the room. When he died, Sarah had thrown herself into being him, being loud and present and unmissable. She'd thought that was strength. But watching Ryan, she'd seen a different kind of power. The power of presence without performance, of competence without pride. It was everything she'd tried to teach Lily but had failed to model herself. Her phone buzzed. Lily, Mom, can we talk? Of course. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Lily's voice was tight. I need to say something, and I need you to listen. Sarah's chest constricted. I'm listening. I've been really angry at you, for years, for choosing work over me, for missing everything that mattered. And when I saw you with Ryan and Emma, I got even angrier, because you had time for them but never for me. Lily, let me finish, please. Lily took a shaky breath. But watching you with them, I saw something I've never seen before. You were present. Really present. Not on your phone, not thinking about the next meeting, just there. And I realized maybe you didn't know how. Maybe Dad's death broke something in you, and you forgot how to be anything but busy. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so sorry, baby. You're right. About all of it. I don't need an apology. I need you to keep being that person. The one I saw with Emma. The one who smiled at Ryan like he was the only person in the world. Can you do that? Can you be that person for me too? Yes, Sarah whispered. God, yes. I want to. I just don't know how. Ryan knows. Maybe. Lily paused. Maybe he could teach us both. After the call, Sarah sat with her daughter's words. Ryan had done something she'd thought impossible. He'd given Lily hope. Hope that Sarah could change, could be better, could choose presence over performance. But there was a problem. Sarah felt it growing every time she saw Ryan. Every time their hands brushed or their eyes met across a room, she was falling for him, for his quiet strength and honest grief, and the way he loved his daughter with every broken piece of himself. And that terrified her. Because people in Sarah's position didn't fall for facility managers, didn't bridge the gap between boardrooms and maintenance closets, didn't risk their carefully constructed empires for something as fragile as feelings. But maybe that was the point. Maybe true strength wasn't building walls. Maybe it was having the courage to let them fall. The following Saturday, Emma asked if they could have dinner at Sarah's house instead of just painting. Ryan hesitated, but Sarah insisted. I'll cook, she said. Or try to. It's been a while. Dinner was chaotic and imperfect. Sarah burned the chicken. Emma spilled juice on the table. Lily laughed so hard she snorted. And Ryan, watching Sarah try to salvage the meal with the same determination she brought to board meetings, felt something in his chest that had been cold for years begin to warm. After dinner, Lily took Emma upstairs to show her something on her computer. Ryan helped Sarah clean up, their movements synchronized in the comfortable way of people who'd done this before in other lives. I'm sorry about the chicken, Sarah said. It was perfect. It was cremated. Still perfect. Ryan set down the dish he was drying. Sarah, I need to tell you something. She turned to face him, and in the kitchen light, Ryan saw her clearly. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just a woman who'd forgotten how to be soft and was relearning with every mistake. I'm scared, Ryan said. Of this, of what's happening between us. Because the last time I let myself care about someone, I lost her. And losing her broke me so completely that I'm still finding pieces. I'm scared too, Sarah admitted. Of failing again. Of being the person who chooses wrong. Who loses what matters because she's too busy protecting what doesn't. So what do we do? Sarah crossed the kitchen and took his hands. We choose to try anyway. We choose each other. Not perfectly, not without fear, but consciously, deliberately. Every single day. What about Lily, Emma? They're watching us, learning from us. Then let's teach them something true. That love isn't about perfection or fearlessness. It's about showing up, being present, choosing connection even when it's terrifying. Ryan pulled her close. She fit against him like she'd been made for that exact space. They stood there in her kitchen, holding each other. Two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole. Upstairs, Lily and Emma watched from the landing. Emma tugged Lily's sleeve. Does this mean Miss Sarah can be my mommy? Lily smiled, her anger finally, fully released. Maybe, little artist. Maybe. 3 months passed. 3 months of Saturday dinners and Tuesday lunches and stolen moments in hallways between meetings. 3 months of Lily slowly, carefully opening to the idea that her mother might choose differently this time. 3 months of Emma drawing family portraits that now included 4 people without question marks. Ryan settled into his role at Reynolds Tech. His title changed. Director of Engineering. His salary tripled. He moved into a better apartment with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen faucet that didn't leak. Emma started at a new school with art programs and resources Ryan had only dreamed of providing. But the most significant change wasn't financial. It was internal. Ryan remembered who he'd been before grief. Remembered that engineering problems weren't the only things he could solve. That being a good father meant modeling resilience, not just survival. One Tuesday evening, Ryan worked late at the office. He was reviewing plans for a new building expansion when Sarah appeared in his doorway. She wore the same expression she'd worn the day he'd fixed the HVAC. Determined and vulnerable in equal measure. "Come with me," she said. "Where?" "Somewhere important." Sarah drove them to a park Ryan had never visited. It was small, tucked between buildings, with old trees and benches that had seen decades of use. They sat side by side as the sun set, painting the sky in colors Emma would have loved. "James proposed to me here," Sarah said. 20 years ago. We were kids who thought love was enough. Wasn't it? For a while. But we wanted different things. He wanted family and presence. I wanted career and impact. We thought we could have both. But compromise isn't the same as balance. We compromised until we were both miserable. Until he was gone and I realized I'd traded the only things that mattered for things that didn't matter at all. Ryan took her hand. "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah turned to face him. "Because I don't want to make the same mistake. Because when I look at you, I see someone who understands that being present is the hardest work there is. And I want that. Want to learn it. Want to choose it every day." "Sarah, wait, let me finish." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, nothing like the diamond monstrosity James had given her. "Ryan Mitchell, I'm not proposing, not yet, but I'm asking for something harder. I'm asking if you'll build a life with me, if you'll teach me how to be the mother Lily deserves, if you'll let me be the partner you and Emma deserve, if you'll risk loving me even though we've both lost before." Ryan stared at the ring, at this woman who'd somehow become his anchor, who'd given him back parts of himself he'd thought were gone forever, who'd shown Lily that change was possible and Emma that families could grow. "I have one condition," Ryan said. "What?" "You let me propose to you properly, with Emma and Lily there, because they're part of this too." Sarah laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Deal." Ryan took the ring and slipped it into his pocket. Then he pulled Sarah close and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted like second chances and hard-won hope, like 2 people who'd survived the worst and chosen, against all reason, to risk their hearts again. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, Ryan gathered everyone in Sarah's living room. Lily and Emma sat on the couch, sensing something important was about to happen. Sarah stood by the window, her usual confidence replaced by nervous anticipation. Ryan knelt down in front of them. "Not just Sarah, all 3 of them. Emma," he said, looking at his daughter. 3 years ago, it was just you and me. We were surviving, barely, but we were doing it together, and I thought that was enough, that we'd always be just us 2 against the world." Emma's eyes were huge. She nodded but didn't speak. "Then we met Sarah and Lily, and slowly, without me really noticing, we stopped surviving and started living. We became something bigger than just you and me. We became a family." Ryan turned to Lily. "Lily, you gave your mom permission to try again, to risk being hurt, to choose presence over protection. That was brave, and I'm asking you now, one more time. Do I have your blessing to make this permanent?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. God, yes." Finally, Ryan looked at Sarah. He pulled out the ring she'd given him. "Sarah Reynolds, you once told me that some people you help aren't just strangers. They're doorways to a life you never imagined. You were right. The night I gave Lily a ride, I opened a door I didn't know was there. A door that led back to myself. To purpose. To love. So I'm asking you now, in front of the people who matter most, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life learning to be present with you? Sarah dropped to her knees beside him. Yes, always yes. They kissed while Emma squealed and Lily laughed and cried at the same time. And in that moment, in Sarah's living room filled with paintings Emma had made and memories they'd all built together, 4 broken people became one whole family. The wedding was small, just the 4 of them and a handful of friends. Sarah wore a simple dress. Ryan wore a suit that fit better than anything he'd owned in years. Emma was flower girl. Lily was maid of honor. They got married in the same park where Sarah had brought Ryan that evening, where she'd offered him a ring and asked for a life. The vows they spoke were honest. No promises of perfection or forever after, just commitments to show up, to be present, to choose each other every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. After the ceremony, as they walked back to the car with Emma between them and Lily beside Sarah, Ryan thought about that storm, about the girl he'd stopped for, about how a single moment of kindness had unraveled his careful loneliness and led him here. Some doorways you walk through without knowing where they lead. Some strangers become family. Some storms don't destroy, they wash away everything false until only truth remains. Emma tugged his hand. Daddy? Yeah. Baby? Are you happy? Ryan looked at his daughter. At Sarah, who smiled at him with eyes that finally knew rest. At Lily, who'd stopped running from her mother and learned to walk beside her instead. He thought about his small apartment with the leaking faucet and thin pancakes, about everything he'd lost and everything he'd found. Yeah, Ryan said. I really am. They drove home together, all 4 of them, to the house they'd decided to share. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. Sarah still worked too much sometimes. Ryan still woke at night, reaching for ghosts. Lily still struggled with anger. Emma still drew pictures of the mother she'd lost. But they were present for each other. They chose connection over isolation. They built something real from the broken pieces they'd each carried alone for so long. And on rainy nights, when storms rolled through the city, Ryan would think about that girl standing under a broken streetlight. About the moment he chose to stop, about how the smallest acts of kindness could become doorways to unimaginable grace. He'd learned something in those months. That healing wasn't about erasing pain or pretending loss never happened. It was about making space for new love without abandoning old grief. About letting people in even when every instinct screamed to stay closed. About teaching children that brokenness wasn't the end of the story. Years later, Emma would ask him about that night. About why he'd stopped when most people wouldn't have. Ryan would think about his answer for a long time. And finally he'd say, because I knew what it felt like to be lost in a storm. And I remembered that sometimes, all you need is one person to stop. Just one person to say, I see you. You're not alone. Get in. I'll take you home. And she did take you home, didn't she, Daddy? Emma would ask. Ryan would smile, looking across the room at Sarah helping Lily with something, the 2 of them finally comfortable in each other's presence. Yeah, sweetheart. She really did. We all took each other home.